Good morning. So today we are going to learn about the random library, and it's one of the libraries used for randomly generating numbers, text, or whatever you have. But then you have to also note that do not use it for generating passwords. Okay, so the random library, after a very long period of time, will repeat, becomes repetitive, and if you have softwares like that and you use random library to generate passwords or keys or certain permission blocks for clients, then you're going to create a lot of problems. Okay, so I want to focus on this random library, and we see how we can use it for our works. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is to import the library, because when you run Python, the library is not available, so you have to import it. So import library. So and the library name is random, so import random. Now that we are done importing it, so the library is now available to us, we can now go ahead and use the library. But then before you start using the library, let me explain a few things to you. So if you realize, this random library, it has okay, so okay, so picks a random element, pick random element, pick random sample, pick weighted random sample, generates random permutations. Okay, so uniform within range, so it's a random variable generators. Okay, so that's basically what the random function does. Sorry, the random library does, but it has a number of functions to perform its actions. So one, we have function in the random library. So we have random itself. So in the random library, there's another function called what? Random, which also does a particular function. There's another function called choices. There's another function called sample, another one called choice, then another one called randint, random integer, or randint. Okay, randint simply. So these are the five functions I would focus on um, in my. So let us continue our class. So this is the syntax. Okay, depending on the way I imported the random library, this is the syntax. I'll show you the other way. So you mentioned the library name. This is a general syntax. Dot, then the function name, then you put in your arguments for, then you use it. Okay, so this is how we are going to be using all the functions. So let's start with a random function and let's see what it does. So the random function in the random library, the random function in the random library, what it does is it generates decimal numbers between what? 0 and 1. So I mentioned what the library name, and the library name is random dot, then the function name is what? Random. So these are all the functions you can get, a lot of them. So uniform, triangular, system random, shuffle, set state, speed, sample, rand range, random, randint, and a whole lot. But we are going to use what? The random. So random dot the random function, then you open the random function and it says that what? X in the interval of what? 0 to 1. So by default, it generates a random number from what? Between 0 and 1. And if you check, the square bracket means that 0 is inclusive. The this bracket on the right side means that 1 is not inclusive. Okay, so that's the range. So once I do this, you don't need to put in any parameter. So this one takes no parameters. I told you there are some functions that take in parameters, there are some functions that do not take in parameters, and there are some functions that take in only one parameter, others take in more parameters. Now, when we get to the topic of functions, you get to see how to create functions and what are parameters and arguments and stuff like that. So I can assign this to a variable. Let me call it num, or yes, number. Then we print it out. So let's print our number out, and that will be it. So forget about these things here. They are just notes. Okay, they are not going to run as code. So this is our code. Okay, and the rest of these ones are just explanations, and that's why they have the hashtag, which is called commenting. So we have the random library. You import the random library. If you want to use the random function, you say what? The random library dot the random function in the random library. Then you assign it to a variable and you print it out, or you use it for whatever you want to do. Okay. So when I run this, it generates these decimal numbers. Okay. If I'm to run it again, I get something else. Every time you run it, you get a different answer. And so on and so forth. So that's what the function of the random. And you realize that it's between 0 and 1. It never goes to 1. It's never, it sometimes almost approaches 0, but you never see it like 1.0000. It's always between it. Now, somebody may ask, I want to generate random floats. That means random decimals, maybe 83, 83.45, maybe 92.11, 75.68. So how do you generate random numbers as floats? So if you want to do that, all what you have to do is to multiply. Okay, so you already have this number. You already have this number. Okay, so I'm just going to say that I'll take the number, and I'll take the old number, and I'll multiply it by 100. So it means that when the computer generates this number, it should shift the decimal place by what? 2. 1, 2, meaning what? 43. Okay, 43. So 43.48 will now become our new decimal number that has been generated. So when I multiply by 100 and I assign it to the same number, now the old value is being replaced with what? The new value, which is a multiplication by 100, and let us print it out. So when I print it out and I run this, you realize that all my numbers are in the hundreds. You can get a number in ones. Okay, so you could see that the numbers keep changing and it's in the hundred. You can multiply by 1,000. So back to business. So we can generate floats within this range. Now let's say you want it in only 2 decimal places, then you can put in the random. So you say random. Okay, so there's a random function you've called, sorry, round, not random, round. So let's round this number, comma, then the number of decimal places, so to 2 decimal places. So round the number times 10 to 2 decimal places and I assign it to the number. Okay, so when I'm to run this, and this is what I get. Okay, so I'm randomly generating numbers between 0 and 100. Sometimes you may get a single number, but it's quite rare to get a single number. Okay, we got a 3. Okay, so you could see that this one works fine. So this is how you can use the random function in the random library, generate decimal numbers between 0 and 1, but you can scale it up or scale it down to do whatever you want to do. Okay, let me give a short pause. I'll be back. Okay, so continuing what I was saying, so now let us look at the random dot choice. Okay, so random dot choice. So the choice you give the computer a set of numbers or a group of numbers, then the computer randomly chooses one of them. Okay. So sometimes it's not only limited to numbers, it could be a list of items or anything. The computer will just randomly choose one of them. So I can have something like let me start with numbers, where I have, maybe let me call it list of numbers. Yes, list of numbers. Seems like that variable name has been used before. So I can have a list, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So I have a list of numbers, and I can say that so to randomly choose from this list, I would first call the random library dot, then the function name is what? Choice. Okay. And with a choice, you have to put in what? A sequence. Okay. So I need to put in something that's like a list or a set or something. So list of numbers. So it's a list of numbers. And so when I put in list of numbers, it will randomly choose one of them. Then let me call it num. Okay. Let me call it num. So when I run this program, let me print it. Instead of printing it here, I intentionally call it number so that we can use the same print function. Okay. So when I run this, we get 9. Okay. So it randomly chose 9 from this list. When I click on it, it chooses the numbers that I put in the list. Okay. If I had put apples, oranges, bananas, let's see. Apples, oranges, bananas, and so on. So these are my list. So I'm calling it, it's supposed to be list of fruits or something, but let's leave the variable names and we speed up with work. So it has chosen banana this time. It chose orange. It chose orange again, bananas again, oranges again, oranges again, oranges again, oranges again, bananas, 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 oranges, bananas, oranges, bananas, oranges. Oh, I'm waiting to see apple. Okay, apple. Okay. Okay. So randomly choose from the list. It could be very lengthy or very short. Okay. But if the list is only having one element, it will be choosing that element all the time. Okay. So apples, no matter how many times you run it randomly, you will still choose apple because you have no option. Okay. So undo. Okay, so let us move on to the next one. This is random dot choices generates a set of random items from a set of user defined items. Okay, so the choice generates a random item from a set of user defined items by choosing one of them. By here, find items by choosing a number of them. Okay, so the number of them you specify. So the choices is just like the choice, but just that you have the upper hand to say, okay, I want 3 of them, I want 5 of them. So let us use a variable name like list. Let me say list num. Okay, so then we state maybe we have maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. So we have these numbers and we want to randomly choose, let's say, you want the computer to be choosing 3 of them at a time. Okay, there is a mistake here. Okay, you want the computer to be choosing 3 of them at a time, or like randomly choose 3 of them for you. So we can say num is equal to, then the random library dot, the function name is what? Choices. Okay, not choice. So from choices we choose lists num as our this. So we put in the list, then we print out what? The num. Let me cut this one, the print. I'm still using num so that we don't have to change this part. Okay, so when we run this, what you realize is that randomly chose 90. Okay, randomly chose 90. And let me give a pause. So let's continue the class. So from here we got only one. It chose only one item from the list because we didn't specify the number of items you should choose. So we put a comma, then you say so this is what we are looking for. So k int, by default it is what, 1. I would say k is equal to, then maybe we want 3. Okay, so when I run this, it's going to give us a list of 3 items. So take note, anytime you use the random dot choices, you get a list. When you use the random dot choose, you get an element. So if this are made of strings, so when you use a random dot choice, you get one of them, which is a string, and that's what you get. If they are numbers, you get a number, which is an int. If they are floats, decimals, you get a float. Okay, but then for the random dot choice, you get a list because you are generating not only one item but a list of a number of items. So I can say maybe you should randomly generate 5. Okay, so when I run this, it randomly picks 5 elements from the list. It doesn't repeat any of them. Okay, sometimes it repeats. I've seen a repetition. So it randomly picks the number of items you want in the list. So maybe you want only 3, so then you can focus on these. Okay, so that's how the random dot choices work. Now let us look at random dot randint. Okay, so the randint function in the random library. So generate random numbers from point A to B, where A to B is user defined. Okay, so randint, int means integers, rand means random, so it randomly generates integers between point A to B. So let me say num is equal to, then I call random the library dot what, randint. So when I say randint, I specify random integers in the range A to B. So the square bracket means that A and B are what, included. A and B are included. If you have a little bit of math background, you know, if you have a set with square brackets, it means they are included. So maybe from 1 to 10. Okay, so randomly generate integers from 1 to 10. Okay, so that one I can use then I print my num. So Control V, then I run it. So it randomly generates 9, 9, 9, 4, 7, 9, 1, and you see, so you can use this randint, okay, to generate integers if you want. Then you use this random function in the random library to generate floats. Then use the choice and the choices to generate random elements from your own list or from your own set. Okay, it could be a list or a set or anything. So sometimes you can have a dictionary. You can have a dictionary and you can randomly generate elements from the dictionary, but then it will randomly generate their keys. We've not talked about dictionaries yet, so I'll not, when we learn about dictionaries, then you apply this concept to dictionaries. Okay, so now let us look at the last row I want us to see. Now random dot sample, so we can have our sample, let's call it sum. Okay, and from our sample we can have, let's say some elements may be repeating, so we can have 1 1 1 2 2 2 2, so the twos are 4, then we have 3. Okay, so this is a sample we are having. So if I want to use a random dot sample, so let me just call it num is equal to, then I call the random library name, then I say dot sample. So we generate a sample. Now the first thing is saying the population, so it could be a sequence. Okay, then we have the integer. Okay, then we have counts. Okay, so sometimes you might put in a sequence, So sometimes you realize that you have this one. I have the sequence, so I can just put in the sequence as what sum. Okay, then the k, that's the number of random elements it should generate for you. Let's say 3. Okay, I can run this, then let me print the num out. So when I print this one out and I run this, I get 3, 1, 2. You know that having numbers repeating increases their probability of being selected. For example, 2, there are 4 twos, and that one increases its chances of being selected. And there are 3 ones, so twos and ones are more likely to be appearing in the elements or in the sets, and so on and so forth. So you could see the repetition of twos and ones more often. So that could be our sample. Okay, but sometimes I already have this sample. Okay, I already have this sample. I already have this sample. So the interesting thing about sample is that so you can have a list of elements that are repeating, but you may not have the time to type all of them. So we know that one repeats 3 times. Okay, and we also know that 2 repeats 4 times. Okay, and we also know that what 3 repeats once. Okay, so we can put in the element, the sequence, which is 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's our sample. But then we call in another element, another option called counts. So counts is equal to, then you say this count is a list. So how many times does 1 repeat? And 1 repeats what? 3 times. I put in 3. So it means that the element in the first position of this sequence repeats 3 times, and that first element is 1. Now, how many times does 2 repeat in your sequence, which is what? 4. And how many times that 3 repeats, which is once? So instead of typing the entire sequence, you can use this method in the sample. Okay, so now sample gets to know that, oh, so 1 is not only once, it's actually 3 times, appearing 3 times, and 2 is actually appearing 4 times, and 3 is actually appearing what? Once. So instead of writing the whole sample, you can use the count argument, the count parameter in the sample function to populate those repetitions, okay, instead of typing everything. So imagine we have a very long list and some numbers are repeating like 10 times, then you have to generate all of them. But if you already have them, you can put it in right away, and that's all. So if you run this, you are still going to get similar output. You can see 2 is repeating more often because it's the largest, and 1 is also repeating more often because that's the second largest. Okay, so this is how to use these 5 functions. So random, choice, choices, randint, and sample. And this will bring us to the end of the video on random. There are more functions in the random library, and you can focus on how to use them. Okay, so have a nice day. Bye.